Hi, my name is Lisa, and I am a victim of Child Protective Services of Alameda County. I have two sons, and one of my oldest son was taken away from me in 2002 due to an incident at his grandmother's house. I pulled his ear. Child Protective Services took my son into custody, and Faith Battles was my worker. She stated that this wasn't a bad incident and my son would be returning to me. I have not seen my son since 2002 due to the injustice of Alameda County Child Protective Services and the family court system in Department 507 in the Hayward Family Court. What ensued, I hired 4 attorneys. First I hired Rafael Cardoza. I paid him to represent me. In this case, he stated that I would have my son Niles back in 9 months. I would have to do my case plan, in which I did my case plan. But Mr. Cardoza was charging the Alameda court appointed system and charging me a retainer fee simultaneously. And when I had to do my taxes, they took the money out for Mr. Cardoza, double dipping into the funds. Next, I hired Carmelisa Berry. She was from a law office. She stated, she went over the files and she said, they just can't do this. This is a gross injustice. Mrs. Berry came to court. She went behind closed doors with county counsel Victoria Wu, and when she came out, she said she could not represent me. I had paid her $2,500. I went to her office and I asked her what was going on, and she stated that she could not represent me and she tried to get me to sign a paper for the county. I wouldn't do it. She finally returned my money. But nevertheless, Niles was still in protective custody with Child Protective Services in Alameda County. He was placed in a foster care home, which he was horribly beaten up. He was abused. He was medicated. Let me give you a little background about Niles. Niles went to school at Pioneer in Union City, and he was a good student. He had no trouble in background. He was a good kid. He still is a good kid, I assume. Niles' father hadn't seen him at this point in 5 years, so he really didn't know him. And when Faith Battles, the social worker, had tried to call him, which his name is Claiborne Sibley, he said he did not know a Lisa Washington or a Niles Sibley. In May, the Center for the Vulnerable Child, Dr. Vance Hitchner, came to evaluate my son and I. He said Niles was just really missing home and missing his younger brother, Dalen. In June, Mr. Sibley came to court, and he was appointed a court-appointed attorney. Let me give you a little background on Claiborne Sibley. Claiborne Sibley was born in September of 61. 61 or 62. He's been working at NUMMI for 20 plus years, where he makes $7,500 a month. Mr. Sibley was appointed a court-appointed attorney, through Joy Ricardo. But when I signed up through Joy Ricardo, I was denied one. I was a flight attendant for Northwest Airlines. What ensued was I was left without an attorney due to Mrs. Berry removing herself. So the judge stated that my civil rights were being violated, and he wanted me to go get another attorney and bring him to court, and he wanted to see who this was. And so I did so. I hired Mr. Bassett, William Bassett, out of Sunnyvale. And a week later was a court date. Mr. Bassett prepared all the witnesses as well as he could. He prepared me. He came into court. Before the court, Winifred Smith, County Counsel Victoria Wu, Joy Ricardo, Mary Oakland, Claiborne's court-appointed attorney, and went into Judge Winifred Smith's chambers for 45 minutes. When Mr. Bassett returned, I asked him, was everything okay? He stated, no, it wasn't. They wouldn't let him call any of the witnesses. They wouldn't let him, they would object to everything he said. After the hearing, he stated that, I asked him what was going on. He was going to go see what was going on. He called me later on that day and he stated that they didn't like me because of my religious beliefs. So, in there, they terminated, they didn't want me to visit Niles they only wanted me to visit Niles once a month. I hired Goodman. I went and rehired another attorney, Andrea Goodman and Nina Butani. They wrote a letter to me and they observed the judge in a preliminary hearing. They stated that Winifred Smith wasn't acting in the best of in a judicial manner. So at the hearing, Judge Winifred Smith took away all my rights to see Niles, even though my rights were at this point were not terminated, and I still had my younger child with me. He couldn't even see his brother. They put Niles on medication. And I understand this, I've come to believe that this is their way of sedating kids that are being pulled away from their parents. I have not seen in September there was a hearing. Goodman and Butani, I asked them to remove themselves because they were not acting in my best interest. They said I had to keep them as my attorney. And I told them I did not want to. They said, no, you have to. And then at the end of the trial, they said, we quit. And so I was devastated at that point because I was left with no rights at all. I was left with no right to due process, no right to parent my son. But yet I did have my younger son with me. He couldn't even see his brother. This is cruel and unusual punishment.